everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Rio. I'm your host, Ysmaine, and here with me is Carlos. How are you, Carlos?
Hey, good. How you guys doing today?
Very excited to be here with you and talk about one topic that I feel like is very crucial now, especially spring season. The market is kind of heating up. There's a lot of offers and a lot of buyers out there trying to compete for one property. So today, we're going to be talking about making them say yes, how to craft a winning offer. And we're going to give you some insights, some pro tips of how to make your offer stand out in this very competitive market. I feel like our song's a little loud, or is it just me? There you go. That's a little better. So, okay, before we get into it, I would like to hop on this myth of the day, which Carlos just experienced something, and of course, we are dealing on this one together, so I experienced it as well. So I'll let you take away on this myth today.
All right. So the myth of the day today is it's totally fine to change jobs during the home buying process without consulting your loan officer or realtor, as long as I'm still employed.
No.
No.
Big one, big X.
Absolutely not. You need to consult us if there's going to be any changes to your income or your anything like that, because we have to take that consideration and qualify you based on the new numbers, because it can blow up your deal, especially after you're under contract.
Yes. A lot of things change when you change your jobs that you might not even realize. If it goes up, great. It might be a little easier going. But if it's like maybe you're going from being a W-2 employee with pay stubs and deciding to open your own business, that's definitely a no-go. That will kill the deal automatically.
Or say like you're going to be making more money, but now you're driving more. And now we need a commute letter to explain why you're going to be traveling so much more. And are you really going to be making that money if you have to pay so much, because we're going to calculate like how much you're going to be spending in tolls now and all that stuff. And when you take all of that into consideration, it might not be such a good idea.
No, it might not. And especially if you're changing jobs to go for a job that pays less, then you really should consult us first before making the jump for any reason. It can
100%.
Yeah, it could mess up the deal completely. So please, always reach out to us first. I know it's your life, it's your decisions. We're not trying to interfere with your life, but when you're buying a house, if you want the house, you better really consult with us first, just to make sure that things are good and squared away.
And that you still qualify, you know what I mean? That you're not going to lose the property because you made a boo-boo.
Exactly. So that's the big myth of the day. I don't even know if it's really a myth or if it's just a misunderstanding or if people don't think that really impacts it at all, but we just felt like this was a good call out.
I've had it happen so many times that I feel like it is a myth at this point.
I know. I think so too. And I have it happen to me too. My situation, the very first time that it happened, the person actually wanted to take a leap of faith and start a business of their own. So that definitely killed the deal, because now they needed 2 years of independent contractor status. No buying home at all.
Yeah.
That was no go. So just keep this one in mind. Big one for us for today. Now, going back to today's topic, making them say yes, how to craft a winning offer. So getting into this, I want to highlight that offering more is not always an attractive feature for making an offer better. And the reason for that, and I want to just clarify, when you're buying and you're financing, there's always going to be an appraisal unless the amount of money you're putting as a down payment is substantial enough. And by that, I mean more than 20%, where the bank may be willing to waive the appraisal. So if you offer $50,000 more than the price the house is listed for, that does not mean the seller's guaranteed to get that amount that you're offering unless you're willing to pay the difference in cash, which majority of buyers are not. They are really trying to finance as much as they can. So you offering more is not going to be necessarily the best appealing, technique there to increase your odds of winning the bidding. So
especially if like if you can offer $200,000 on $150,000 home, but it doesn't matter if the house isn't going to appraise, like the listing agent is not going to take that offer serious because they know that number will never hit unless you put an appraisal gap behind it or something to that extent.
Exactly. So again, just offering higher is not necessarily the only attractive feature of making your offer more enticing to that seller. So we're going to get into other things that you need to understand and maybe consider when putting an offer and strategizing with your realtor and your loan officer. So the first one is going back to the basics, picking up the phone and actually talking to the listing agent to understand what the seller's needs are. So once you understand what the seller's looking for, you may understand that maybe they want a 60-day closing because they need more time, or the opposite, they need to close in 3 weeks because they have a house that's being built and it's ready in 3 weeks and they need to move. So understanding that ahead of time will help you make sure you have that in your offer, and it will look more attractive to that seller. And if you otherwise you didn't call, you would know, and you're just thinking maybe they want a quick settlement, but they don't, or vice versa. So really understanding those priorities from the seller ahead of time could actually make your offer already look a little more appealing. Other things that the seller may be looking for too, and it's becoming more and more common, may be an option to stay in the property post-settlement. And that's what we call it, a rent back option. So they may be, again, going back to maybe they're building a home and the home is going to be ready, I don't know, end of May, but they need to stay in the house for at least another week so they can get things together and move into the new home. But they need the funds ahead of time to be able to close in the new home. So they may ask for that rent back option. So again, going back to understanding their needs, you can have that in your offer ahead of time and offer them a 1 week free stay post settlement if that's something you're comfortable offering. And that will already be more enticing than other offers that might not have that in terms. So again, terms are very important. Do you want to add anything to this one?
Yeah, another thing that really helps that I've seen, helps win offers is, for example, when we as a loan officer will call the listing agent and kind of, put their mind at ease about the pre-approval. Hey, listen, we already verified, we verified the assets, we already verified employment, we ran, desktop underwriting and all that kind of stuff. And just tell them, like how strong, the buyer is, and how we don't have any overlays, so we underwrite directly to Fannie, Freddie, Ginnie, you know what I mean? So
Exactly.
that always helps also when you can tell them, hey, listen, if it's an FHA deal, for example, and as long as the house doesn't have any holes on the wall or peeling paint, like you can treat it pretty much like a conventional, you know what I mean? Because we don't have any extra overlays that other lenders might have, and that always puts them at ease, especially when you have when you're competing against conventional offers and you have an FHA. That has helped me win offers before.
Yes, yeah. And then tie into this, I'm glad you got into this because that's the next topic. So getting started early enough with your loan officer, and I do mean like months in advance, will also help you clean up your financials, have a better credit score so you can have a better interest rate, and we'll put you in a better financial position to be able to purchase and be a competitive buyer as a whole. So starting early is actually really good. Doesn't mean you need to get an approval 6 months in advance. That's not what I'm saying, but getting in touch with Carlos 6 months in advance so he can help you, maximize your credit, help you strategize on how to save, how to get better terms, how to qualify.
Put the money in the bank when you have it under the bed, under your mattress,
Yes. Oh my gosh, that is way too often the case, especially with certain cultural, customs. So they do have the habit of putting, keeping money in the house or under the mattress, literally under the mattress.
Literally.
And those funds are considered unverified funds. So they need to be in your account for at least 2 months to be considered seasoned funds when it's just a cash deposit. So yeah, he's right. Preparing months ahead.
When you're getting a gift, like to do the gift the right way, because if you don't do it the right way, you won't be able to use the funds, even though you have the money available. If you can't source the gift, for whatever reason, under whatever guideline, whatever program you're going under, then you won't be able to use the funds. So even though you have the money, you won't be able to use it. So that's why it's good to, prepare, especially when you're getting a gift, you need down payment assistance, or you have, mattress money, because there's people that, get paid and take the money out of their account and put it under the mattress because they feel like it's safer there. I mean, we can argue all day on that, but
losing money too. Like inflation is going up every day. So if you keep your money under the mattress, you're actually losing money by the second. So not the ideal.
Dust.
Exactly. Not the ideal situation there.
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh, I think, hold up 1 second. You keep talking. I think I need to put my computer to charge. Keep chatting.
Yeah. So some other things, that we look at is look at your credit, look at utilization, see where your utilization is. If we can bring it down to increase your credit by lowering your utilization. Those are things that, sometimes take time to report. Like when it's 1 or 2 credit cards, it's not a big deal. But when you have 10 credit cards that are all, pretty high and you need to pay them off, and then we need to wait to see as they report, how your credit, fluctuates.
Yeah.
It does take time to do that. So that's another, good reason to definitely, get started earlier sooner than later.
Yeah, that's true. So continuing here, the next thing is to keep the offer clean. So a lot of things can go into under this topic. So we'll start with the minimal conditions. And by conditions, I do mean every single term that might be in your contract. The very first one that a lot of people will be removing, first thing would be the home buying inspection. I hate that is the case because, it's scary to be doing this and buying a home without, understanding what's working, what's not working, in the property. But there is a way to kind of counter that, and that's going to be given to you guys at the bonus tips. So stay tuned. But you
don't go anywhere.
Don't go anywhere. Stand to the end so you can hear. But basically, if you remove this contingency on inspection, that would definitely make the offer more appealing to the seller because there's one last condition, to clear in order for the deal to close. So that's why it becomes more appealing. Another condition that could be cleared is the appraisal. That one is a little more trickier because the bank is still going to most likely require an appraisal and, force you as the buyer to abide by the purchase price or the appraisal price. And if it doesn't appraise at the purchase price you are saying, and let's say you decided to waive your appraisal, now you are obligated financially to cover the difference between what you offer and what the appraisal amount was. So I don't suggest this one, never, especially if we're going substantially higher. But if the person is actually putting down, 20% or more,
yep,
and the bank is willing to waive and provide what's called an appraisal waiver, and I don't know if that's what's still called.
That's what I was going to say. Sometimes when you're putting a little bit more money down and your debt to income isn't too high, and you're a solid borrower, you can get an appraisal waiver, under 20% sometimes.
Nice.
Yeah.
So if we are able to get that from the bank, then I would say you are able to remove this condition with a little more, ease, because then you're not going to be obligated to pay any difference because there won't be an appraisal being done on the property. And that becomes a little, very attractive to the seller because if anything, the timing that we usually take to close the 30 days, it's heavily because of the appraisal process, which it takes on average 2 to 3 weeks just to get it done. So once you remove that, it becomes almost like a cash buy, right? If you don't have inspections and you don't have an appraisal in place, you could potentially close in 2 weeks, just like if you would with a cash purchase, with very minimal restrictions. Those are the most common ones as far as like conditions that I would say that could be removed if the buyer is willing to do so. Can you think of anything else on the lending side?
So I've seen sometimes where especially like on FHA or government loans,
Mhm.
I've seen where the buyer's willing to cover the repairs, the FHA repairs, or USDA repairs, whatever it is, up to a certain amount. Like they'll say, okay, I will cover the repairs up to $1,500, or up to 2,000. And that kind of makes it a stronger offer. When you're going against conventional offers or something like that, where it might be things that wouldn't normally come up on a conventional appraisal,
Mhm.
but they'll come up on the FHA appraisal. So by
Yeah.
doing this, the seller's more at ease, and more likely to take your offer because you're willing to pay for the repairs if there are any.
Yes, and I'm glad you brought that up because with buyers, especially a VA, military loan, or the FHA, which is a very popular among first-time home buyers, or even the USDA, which is the agricultural loan that we talked about before. Those always, because they're government-backed, they're going to have a very strict policy on safety guidelines and what the property needs to have in order to attend to those guidelines. So a buyer sometimes think that they are completely out of the running for having that kind of financing against a conventional. And honestly, unfortunately, that is sometimes the truth. But there's things we can do and formulate in the contract to make it appealing to the seller, even if you have that kind of financing. And one of them is exactly what you said. If the buyer is willing to do the repairs that may come up from an appraisal requirement, that can look more appealing and kind of level the playing field with another conventional offer, because sometimes we're looking at peeling paint, which is easy to repair if the buyer is willing to go in there, sand it down, and paint it himself, right? Or
Yep.
install a cheap handrail just to have a handrail on the staircase going to the basement.
I've had that happen.
Yeah, and I have it too. And my buyer actually was willing to do it. And they bought a property that was supposedly only cash or conventional with an FHA. They had to install a handrail, paint a couple windows, and install a few GFCI outlets around the house. So under like $300, they were able to do all that and still be able to purchase the home with an FHA. So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. That's a huge way of making your offer stand out while still having a government-backed loan that sometimes is looked down upon by sellers. So
Absolutely.
awesome. The next one is avoiding unnecessary asks, and this one is more like a nudge for especially newer buyers. They see it, HDTV and other programs out there, and they feel like, oh, I need to have this inspection, this inspection, this inspection. And yes, in a perfect world, yes, you should have all the inspections you wish and dream for. But the more you ask, the less chances you have to get that property offer accepted, especially in a competing situation. And we're talking here, specifically a competing, industry right now. Spring season is what it is. It's a very busy market. So we're talking about competition. So in this case, less inspections is better.
Yeah.
The less asks, the better it is. Like no seller's assistance on a competing situation. That's going to be very, very difficult to get unless you're willing to offer more. And sometimes
just kind of throwing it on top of the house.
Yeah.
As long as it'll appraise.
Exactly. I was going to say, as soon as it has room to appraisal, because sometimes you're trying to make up the difference of your ask for an assistance with increasing the value, but the house value may not be there to support. So the seller will know that, and the seller's agent should know that. So they're going to be looking at that and say, yes, I know you're offering $15,000 more and then only asking for $10,000 assistance, but is the property going to appraise $15,000 more? That's the question, right? So any sort of unnecessary ask should be out of the picture. If you don't need the washer and dryer, let's not try to put the washer and dryer in the contract if the seller is already saying that they're not including the washer and dryer in the sale. Or like, oh, I really like that mirror. I want that mirror to stay. Can we put that in the contract? I mean, we could, but again, the more you ask, the less chances
likely that you are to get your offer accepted.
Exactly. So any unnecessary asks should be avoided when you are in a competing situation. And then the third one that I would say would be to keep your contingency timelines, very minimal if possible. And by that, I mean, again, going back to understanding the seller's priorities, if they're trying to close as soon as possible, let's try to do a very quick settlement. But for that to happen, we need to have a really good relationship with the loan officer, understand that that's doable ahead of time, depending on your financing. And the more prepared you are, you could be even pre-approved to the point that you are underwritten. And then to get a quick closing out of your process will be so much faster and so much easier.
All you need is just appraisal.
Yeah. So you tell me, explain the section for them, because I feel like that's very important for them to understand.
Right. Yeah. So there's a program. It's called a certified credit approval, which pretty much just means that a real underwriter. That sounded weird, but
right? Like I'm not a fake one.
but like a physical underwriter, you know what I mean? Like not just a system, like an actual underwriter looked at the file, looked at the income, looked at the assets, looked at the employment history, looked at everything and says, yes, this guy is fully qualified as long as the house qualifies.
Yeah. And then that kind of shortens the time period right there, but easily by a good 7 to 10 days if we get that all time.
Yeah, because all you would need is just title and appraisal, and you're pretty much done. And if you're well qualified, putting significant amount down, and you get an appraisal waiver, then all you really need is just title.
Yeah, and that would be easily 7 to 10 days. So you can really close quickly if the things are kind of falling into place, right? Wow, the appraiser.
If the stars align.
I know. I feel like the appraiser is really the determining factor for timing. Usually the quickest we can do with an appraisal in place, I would say, is 20 days. And that's really
around 3 weeks usually.
Hassling there. Yeah, the buyer has to be on point, has to be signing things that needs to be signed the same day, same hour, if anything. So
paperwork within 30 minutes.
Submitting documentation that is needed as soon as it's needed. So the signing things that needs to be signed. So I think it's important it's a teamwork, it's a team effort. So reducing those timelines is huge. Same thing goes with an appraisal. So, I mean, we do usually have 25, 30 days to get the appraisal done, but we could put it in your contract that we're going to get it done in 20 days or 15 days. And then what happens is if you're already fully, approved and underwritten by Carlos ahead of time, they can make an order of an appraisal within the first 2-3 days of being under contract. And then we can have that appraisal done in less than 2 weeks. So that is doable. We just have to really hit the ground running as soon as we get under contract.
You got to go under contract. The file gets disclosed within 24 to 48 hours because it's already it's pretty much already good to go. And then order appraisal as soon as you sign the intent to proceed. And that's it. And you're off to the races.
Other thing that they can do too, like in terms of timeline shortening it, is the EMD, the earnest money deposit. So one thing that we didn't discuss is that you can offer a very large deposit to show the seller that you are really, I'm going to buy this house. I'm really into it, not backing out, super serious. And then we can shorten the timeline. Usually it's 5 days. You can say, look, I'll give you the deposit in 1 day. I'll drop off tomorrow a check if you accept my offer. So that's really showing commitment and showing, that you are very, very serious buyer and determined to get this house. And the other thing too is the inspection. So if you do decide you still want to do an inspection, because that's important to you, and I get it, you can always shorten the period of contingency for that inspection. So we can say, look, we're going to do the inspection in the first 3 days or 5 days, so the seller know, okay, I get it. You want to do an inspection, but at least I'm not holding up the property out of market, for too long in case you decide, oh, I want to back out. Right. So it gives that peace of mind to the seller as well. So I think that's it for the timelines. This one we kind of mentioned already is the flexible close day. It falls back on understanding the seller's needs and then, making sure that you are flexible with your closing day and abiding by what the seller is requesting. So really you're like, okay, seller, when do you want to close? That's what we're going to do. We're flexible with that. That will definitely make it look more appealing to the seller. Number 5 is strategic escalation clauses. So this one, I should say, It's the most common one when it comes to trying to increase the price of the offer on a competing situation. What it does is that it won't necessarily just you're not required to necessarily just offer a higher amount straight out of the bat. Let's say the property is listed for 250. You are willing to offer 275, but you don't have to offer 275 straight out. In case there's no one else offering more, we can just do the escalation and increment your offer, let's say by $2,000 at a time, based on a competing offer, and go up to 275 if needed, and then stop there as a hard stop. And then if there are no competing offers, and let's say the competing offer, the highest is 270, you would beat that offer by the increment that you determined. So it minimizes you as the buyer to offer too much unnecessarily and committing to a high amount without having to commit to that high amount. So it's a very, very good form. Sometimes an agent may choose not to accept those forms, which I still don't understand why not, considering that that's a Pennsylvania authorized form. But everybody's business different. So some agents may say, no, we're not doing escalation. We're just accepting offers, your best and final and period.
Yeah, best and final.
Yeah, exactly. And that's it. So you have to commit. But if it is allowed, and usually they are, I think I would say the escalation addendums are the best way to go when you're trying to increase that offer amount. Alrighty. So now we finally get to the bonus tips, the pro levels insights here. And I'm going to give it to you guys, the one I promised earlier when it comes to the inspections. So there is something called a walkthrough inspection. And that is a super valuable thing to know. And it will help you as the buyer to feel comfortable with your purchase. If you see a home and you're like, oh my gosh, this might be it. Like, this might be the home I want to put an offer in. We can pre-plan ahead of time. Instead of just going there and looking ourselves with no knowledge of anything, we can plan a walkthrough inspection, which it usually is much cheaper. I would say less than half of the cost of a regular home inspection. But the inspector is going to walk through the property, look at everything that he would normally, but is not going to issue a report, because the report is what we need to actually do an official negotiation of terms. But if you're not planning on doing that because it's going to be competitive and you're going to waive it, we can do a walkthrough, and then you're just going to understand ahead of time, okay, this is all that's wrong with the house. Am I okay with that? And if I am okay with that, then yes, I'll make an offer and I'll waive inspections altogether. So I would say that's my pro level tip when it comes to inspection waiver. And yes, you do have to spend money ahead of time before you even know you got the house. But it does give you, that peace of mind that if you are waiving inspections, at least you already know everything that is to know about the house before you even put that offer in. So that's my pro level tip. Do you have any pro level tips there that you want to share too?
Yeah, actually, yes. So for example, let's say you currently own a home and you need to sell your home to buy the next one. We have programs available where you can access the equity of the house before selling it.
Oh yeah.
And you're able to have the, sufficient money to close on the new house, and then you have 6 months to sell the other house before you have to worry about it after you move into the new one.
And that's the buy now, sell later option, right, Carlos?
That is correct. Yes, that's the buy now, sell later.
Yeah, this is a good one, especially for everybody there that needs to sell a home and cannot afford to buy a home without selling. And that's the biggest contingency you can have on a purchase. No sellers want to see that because the timeline is so, unknown, right? When are you going to buy it? When are you going to sell your home? So they don't want to see that. So this one is a time saver, money saver, and definitely helps you win the offers.
Lifesaver.
Lifesaver. Yeah, so talk to Carlos. If you have a house that you need to sell in order to buy, and you want to buy in this competitive market, let's set up a meeting between you guys, me and Carlos, so we can kind of strategize and find the best option, and then formulate the best offers for you guys to win, your house that you want out there. So that's a pretty big one. Another thing that you can do, and that's another bonus tip for you guys, when you are putting an offer on a property, you as the buyer will always have to pay something called the transfer tax, which is 1% of the purchase price. And the seller also has to pay 1% of the purchase price through the transfer tax. So you can offer to pay for the seller's portion of that transfer tax, meaning you as the buyer, you're going to pay 2% in total of the purchase price. And that is additional credit that you're giving the seller without having to pay more on the home. So you're just increasing your closing costs instead of increasing your monthly payments. So some people like to offer that as a way to spice it up and make your offer, more appealing there to the seller. So I would say that's another pro tip there for you. And
I would say another one that I've seen that is happening more often now after the whole NAR situation is that I'm also seeing the buyers when they're, prepared, like they're able to offer that they're going to pay for the commission of their buyer's agent so that the seller doesn't have to worry about paying buyer's agent commission if they were going to before.
Yes, and that's becoming more and more popular for sure. We mentioned this before when we were talking about the NAR settlement in the previous episode. And you as the buyer, you are legally, technically going to be paying for your agent services. But in the industry, we usually just pass that over to the seller through negotiation in the contract, so the buyer never has to pay for that commission. But in a competing situation, if the buyer is trying to appeal to the seller as the stronger buyer and they have the finances to do so, that would be easily the first thing we can do is say, look, I'll pay for my buyer's agent in full. You don't have to worry about it. And chances are the other buyers might not be offering that. And if you have the financials to do that and you don't necessarily want to offer more, you can just choose to pay your buyer's agent commission. It could be in full. It could be just a portion. It could be a flat amount. Whatever you feel comfortable. Sometimes they say, look, I only have an additional $2,000. So, okay, so let's do $2,000. And that means it's the last $2,000 that the seller has to pay for it. So that's definitely another huge one for sure. I think I had one more. Yes, I think you did bring this up briefly in the beginning about the appraisal gap. But I'll highlight again here in kind of maybe explaining more detail. So if for some reason you're not putting 20% or more, or you're not able to qualify for an appraisal waiver, you are able to do what's called the appraisal gap. And what that means is you're basically telling the seller, hey, seller, I'm offering you $20,000 more than the listed price. And we're getting on the contract with an appraisal contingency. If for some reason that appraisal comes back lower than the price I'm offering you, I'm willing to pay X amount towards the difference of the appraisal and the purchase price. And that's what we call that appraisal gap. And it's usually up to, a certain amount. So you can say, look, I have $5,000 that I'm willing to pour towards an appraisal gap. The beauty of offering this is that it may or may not apply because the property could appraise and then you save $5,000, and the property might not appraise and you might have to pay the $5,000, or it could appraise very close to it and you only pay, $2,000, So it's a very good one to offer. And talking to your realtor to understand what the potential appraisal price value for that property would be may help you feel more comfortable or not offering more and then offering the appraisal gap. Because maybe they're like, you know what, I feel like this property could actually appraise at this higher amount and you're going to be fine. So we can do a very, very thorough CMA, a competitive market analysis, to understand, can this property appraise at the $20,000 more that you're offering? And then you can determine your choice of offering the gap or not based on that too. So that's my pro level tips to close with. In Carlos shared, the biggest one of the day, I think, is really the buy now, sell later. So if you have a house to sell and that's what's holding you back on buying, just talk to Carlos because that's an amazing program. Do you want to share more insights in that program with people that are listening?
Yeah. So the way the program works is they will let you utilize up to a certain portion of the equity on your property. And then there's different scenarios for it. So it depends, on the client situation. But there are some where they will actually make the mortgage payments for the client for 6 months until the house sells. And there are others where the client will make that payment, like for example, let's say it's a situation where they're like, hey, listen, like I want to move into the new house. I need like a week or two to get the house ready, and then it's going to fly off the market because of the neighborhood it's in, whatever, you know what I mean? Like they might be able to time it right where they don't have to make their first payment on their mortgage yet and the house already sells and it's off their credit.
Yeah. I love that program. Every time I have someone in that situation, I think I've sent a few to you just, to see.
Yeah.
Sometimes they might even be able to qualify to purchase a home without having to sell, which is even better yet, and they might not know about it. So that's why talking to you ahead of time and preparing in advance is so important, because they might be able to do that and not even need this program. But if they do, that is available. That's an option. And
that's right. I remember you sent me a client for the buy now, sell later program, and then I was able to qualify them without having to sell it. And then I'm sure you ended up selling it afterwards, but yeah.
It was amazing because they were set that they had to sell in order to buy, and ended up they didn't, and they had the funds available, and we just made a very, very smooth transition because they bought it, they moved into the new home, they prepped the new home, moved into the new home. Then we listed the house for sale after the house was vacant. So it was much smoother, for them to transition into the new home. So if that is possible, for sure, that's the best, way to do it.
Absolutely.
You can also do line of credits, people that may not have a mortgage in the existing home. You have full equity. They could always do a line of credit, pay for the new home, closing costs, and then work on selling.
Yeah. Also, sometimes I've seen people like use that buy now, sell later program or line of credit to clean up all their debt. You know what I mean? And then go and buy the house and then sell later.
As a way to clean up and reduce debt to income ratio. Oh, I love that. Smart. Yep. That's smart. Yeah, so your home is your leverage for sure. I mean, you bought it. It's building up your net worth, and there's so many ways to use that to your advantage. It never should be a stepping stone and a block for you to purchase a new home, because there's so many ways you can use that home in your favor. So just know that it should never be a negative feature. It should definitely be a positive. You would think that someone coming in with an offer to buy someone else's house should be strong and automatic, because that person already has a home, already bought a home, has credit, it has the house itself, has the asset. But they are usually often, unfortunately, seen as the weaker offer because of that contingency. So it should never be the case. So if you have a home, you are in a better position than you think. So just talk to Carlos. That's the answer. On that note, we're going to close this episode for today. Thank you so much for everyone that has been watching or will watch the recorded version later. So take it easy. And we have our contacts in the bottom. So please like, share, and contact us if you have any questions or need any assistance.
And follow us for more.
Follow for more. I'll see you guys.
Till the next time.
And you.